And good morning, there I am, and welcome to another video voter guide here with What's Up Newp. We have been doing these for almost a week now, and we are making our way through the list. 19 candidates, when you count them all up, running for city council, and we are having in-depth conversations with just about all of them. We have reached out to all the candidates and offered them this opportunity, and we're scheduling them as they get back to us and as availability allows for us as well as them. If you're looking to find out more information about any of the candidates running for at-large or for any of the ward seats, we have a Newport City Council election guide that you can find right on whatsupnewp.com. And joining us today is Jamie Bova, who is running for at-large. And good morning, Jamie.
Good morning.
I don't know if people are sick of me yet, but good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I feel like I'm doing these in my sleep.
Well, I noticed that you switch up the hat, and that's how I can tell that it's a different day.
It's a different day. I think yesterday I wore the same hat all day. Yeah, we're getting through. I mean, I'll tell you, it's so fun and learning about all the candidates and just having conversations with some people, because things come up that you've never heard of that they care about before, because things get busy.
Well, and it's nice to have the time to really dig into the issues, because it's so hard when you're on the timed forums and stuff. You have 60 seconds, 90 seconds, and there's so much to talk about that I feel like I can barely get out the beginnings of what I want to talk about in that time. Never mind actually get into it.
Yeah, and that's why we chose to go this way. Some people can master the 1 minute answer, and some people have a really hard time taking all the thoughts in their head and trying to put it into 1 minute. So, as I've said through other chats, this gives candidates as long as they want to answer a question. And we've provided some questions out to the candidates, and then we do follow-ups as we have the conversation. But hopefully people, you have 2 weeks from Tuesday to get to know all the candidates for at-large.
That's insane. 2 weeks.
I know.
Wow.
That's kind of why we have gone so in depth this week and have given up. When it comes down to it, it's going to take about 20 hours to interview each candidate, all the candidates. And I hope people spend the time to get to know the candidates, as well as don't forget, anywhere in the city, you have a primary on September 8th, and then Ward 3, you have a primary on September 8th as well.
Yeah, they have the the ward primary.
The ward primary, yes. So most people probably know you. You are an incumbent. You are currently the chair, otherwise known as the mayor on Newport City Council. But maybe you can give a little bit more background that maybe people don't normally hear about Jamie Bova.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, just to get this out, I just wanted to say thank you for doing this, because like you said, you're putting in however many hours, not just in interviews, but in prepping and everything. So I do appreciate that. I know that you guys at What's Up Newp, you at What's Up Newp do a lot of work and are pretty much always working at any given hour. So. And
I should mention that Mr. Prosnitz, I have given him a couple days off because he is having a humongous big wedding anniversary, and so he's actually staycationing in Newport this weekend.
All right, I'll have to look out for him.
So keep an eye out for Mr. Prosnitz, who is boarded up in a hotel somewhere enjoying his anniversary. So he'll be back with us, I think, tomorrow. So, but further on, more about Jamie.
Yeah. So I'm an engineer. I'm sure a lot of people know that about me by now. It's kind of like CrossFit. If you know someone's an engineer, because they'll tell you they're an engineer. And I work at the Navy base. I work on the Columbia class of submarines, which is the soon-to-be class that are replacing the Ohio subs, for anyone who knows anything about submarines. And I like that work as an engineer, but I wanted to run for council because I wanted to just be more involved in the community. And there's an aspect of working on boats and working on technical stuff like that where you do miss like some of the personal interactions, because you're just so in the weeds on stuff. So I like that with council, I get to do more personal issues. And I mean, other things, I don't know how in depth to talk about myself. I'm a huge nerd.
I guess you could nerd out a little bit and just give people maybe a background on school education.
Yeah, I mean, I went to URI for engineering. I grew up in Middletown, went to all Middletown public schools, and so I'm an island girl pretty through and through. And I have just always wanted to do more, and I've always wanted to give back and be involved and be busy. I thrive on being busy. So this is the perfect gig for me.
And usually at this time I ask, why people have decided to run for election or run for a, award seat or whatever it may be. So I guess I'll turn it and, you haven't had enough. Why are you seeking re-election?
Well, the first time I ran, it was because I saw a need in our community for more new voices, and I wanted to fill that. And I also wanted to give back. And I thought that my knowledge and my skills would be useful. And I've continued to run because as I've been in office, I've learned more, and I feel like you do become more effective as you learn. And I've gotten really positive feedback from people about the type of work and that I have been doing and how I've been doing it. So I think that I'm doing good things on the council, and people appreciate that, and they feel like they're more part of the conversation. And I want to keep being able to do that.
Excellent. Well, before we dive into the questions, I usually take this moment to introduce, yes, you will see two critters.
A new dog.
Yes, you'll see June walking back and forth, and then Arrow is also, we have a 10-year-old and a 10-month-old. So
I'm very excited. I haven't met June in real life yet.
Well, she's been walking back and forth already, so she's excited about our conversation today. So, we usually kick it off with what's on the top of everybody's mind, and that is COVID-19. Yeah. And obviously, you've been pretty darn close to it. But the question goes like this: what steps do you think the city should be taking to prevent COVID-19 outbreaks in the city? What should the city do to enforce restrictions? Your overall take on COVID-19, anything we could be doing more of, anything we could be doing less of?
I think that we are doing a pretty good job in the city. Our numbers have stayed low in Newport. And I attribute that to just continued communication output from the city. And we have really improved over the past month or so on the mask compliance. When we first put out the mask guidance to wear masks on certain streets, it was really hit or miss in terms of how people complied, but it's gotten a lot better. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from people like noticing that more and more people out and about are wearing masks, which science tells us does help a lot with controlling the spread. So I think that that's been going well. And then it's being in constant communication with our businesses about what the regulations are and how we can adapt with them. Like when this first got started, none of us knew what was happening. And, everyone was just shut down overnight. And I think everyone was a little bit in shock, but as it's evolved, we've adapted. And I have to, say that the folks from the Department of Business Regulation and RIDO have been coming down more than they were in the beginning, which has also helped because they are they're the experts in, especially, RIDO, the experts in controlling the spread and explaining why the regulations are how they are. So having them come down more often now has been really helpful.
What concerns are you hearing mostly from residents regarding COVID still?
The school question, it's a big question on how school will open, if it opens, what it will look like. And I know the school department's been working really hard on that. And I know that they're still in talks with RIDE, finalizing the plans. And like I said earlier, I heard a lot about people being frustrated with not seeing mask compliance, but I haven't heard that nearly as much. In fact, the only mask comments I have heard lately have been people saying, "Thank you, you've changed. Like it's improved a ton." And that's, we have counselors, volunteer residents, and staff out and about enforcing it. But people are nervous about the economy. I mean, this is our prime time, and even though our businesses aren't doing, horrible, there are people out, it's still obviously not nearly what it would be in a regular summer.
Yeah, that's a great segue into, let's see, the new council will take office in December, correct?
Yep, December 1st is when we get sworn in.
Unfortunately, it looks like this is still we might still be in the midst of this, never mind after it. But, what do you think some of the things we can do? I worry personally with a lot of friends that work in the hospitality and a lot of friends who own businesses. How the heck do they make it through the winter when all of a sudden you close up outside?
Right.
How does retail, all hotels? So what do you think we can do to improve the economic recovery from COVID during and after? And after will probably be sometime next year.
Yeah, I mean, as for after, right now we still have no idea when after will begin. But I mean, to put it bluntly, we need more money. And we've been advocating along with other municipalities to the governor's office and the state that we need more money. Municipalities need to be getting their share of the federal dollars that have come into Rhode Island because, I mean, it's capitalism. If money's not flowing, then things will slow down and people will get laid off. So, I mean, I think continuing to advocate and really push hard on yes, getting stimulus plans passed at the federal level, but also, okay, the money that is available now needs to come out of the state now or as soon as possible. And then it's the same conversations that we've had now with businesses of, what can we do for you? How could we adapt this to you while this world for you to still do business while still following the rules? And we as a city just need to be agile. And I mean, back in June, I passed a resolution really outlining a lot of the kind of work that I wanted the city to be doing to open things up and to try to help our businesses. And I think that we can be adaptive in terms of getting folks outside. I mean, I know obviously January is different than October, but still, even in October, okay, let's see what we can do for heat lamps. Let's push out, open up the streets as much as possible. And just being a lot more flexible and agile with our businesses.
I think the topic has always been there, and there's the people who always say it, and I think COVID-19 just gave them a reason to say, hey, ha, ha, see, I was right. But a lot of people think this, and a lot of people are touting it right now. But when you look at the city's budget for FY 2021, estimated down $3.5 million or readjusted, whatever it may have been. Does Newport rely too heavily on tourism, hospitality, and what alternative industries should the city be looking to develop? Obviously, not a new question; it's just a different question because of COVID-19.
Right. I mean, we have a strong tourism and hospitality industry here. I think that's a great thing. Let's be realistic. Look at Newport. No one's ever going to not want to come on vacation here. So the fact that we are able to step up and make it a thriving economy, I think is great and is a testament to our businesses. But it also, can we have additional sectors? Yes, of course. I think that the city's role in the economy is really to be a strong partner to the businesses in the community. It means, we have to work with the local businesses. We have to create fair and reasonable regulations, give them the resources like I was talking about before, make sure that we have the resources available, whether that's having people that experts on staff that can help with things, or being able to help them from the state level, whatever, or actual things like trash, like I worked with Joe Fitzpatrick on a little bit ago, making sure we have those resources and services that they need, and then continuing to work to adapt to change. It's to be able to encourage additional areas of the economy to grow. It is just about being that strong partner for all of business. And we have the tech bridge that has come in from Newark, and that has pushed a lot of growth. A group out in Portsmouth just got some more funding as well on that. And we have that strong connection to the Navy and to the defense industry, which we can just keep continuing to build on and grow. And Innovate Newport, that has been very successful. And when that was built, part of what has made it so successful is that there's been a lot of outside the box thinking there. And part of that was when that building was being established and that facility was being built out, we partnered with a private company to get fiber optic networking at that building so that there was this type of strong internet connections that those types of businesses in there need. And so, okay, how can we keep doing that across the city? Because that's obviously needed. But I also like to look at, when we look at how we build the economy and how we try to make things stronger, I don't think we can divorce that from looking at the community at large and talking about, okay, if we want to have a stronger year-round economy, how do we be a affordable place to live year-round? So yes, we search out those year-round job opportunities, but it doesn't matter if people take those jobs if they have to live somewhere else. So we have to look at building workforce housing and building up mixed use and working on our schools and continuing to invest and improve our schools, because you just can't have a strong community and a strong network without having housing and schools. That's just those are two essential things in building a community and building an economy, because it doesn't matter if we have good businesses here if no one can live here.
So you hit on all of my questions. So that's going to do it for us today. I'll tell you, I get hundreds of press releases a day, but I got a press release from Raytheon Technologies 2 days ago, and they invested in a new transformational STEM high school in Alabama. They gave them a $4 million grant for a newly formed Alabama School of Cyber Technology and Engineering to prepare students for cybersecurity careers in government and industry. And I was like, maybe it's the cost of real estate. Maybe I don't know why.
Yeah, but it's real cheap in Alabama to live.
Yeah, but how cool would it be if that happened here?
And I think that it can. I think that, and I think that we're taking steps to make it able to happen here, because we have so many great programs at Rogers, like NACTech and the cybersecurity one that I'm blanking on the name of because it has a funny name. And like we just had a senior that graduated with an associate's degree in cybersecurity. So I think we are taking steps to be able to have something like that happen here. And it does also, if we look at the North End and all the potential that there is there, we can really make some strong long-term investments and choices there. And I just want to take one sec, just since I brought up the North End, can we just talk about that for?
Yeah, we can. Usually I wait until somebody brings it up. I think it's P-Tech. Is that what we're looking for?
Oh, P-Tech. Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Ryan.
I know. I try to learn as I listen. But usually I dive into the North End, and the way I usually ask it, and you can go whatever way you were just about to, is, how do you think it should look in 5-10 years? What would your plans be? You're designing it. What do you think would be the best use of the community? So you can go from anywhere there.
Well, I think that, I mean, that's the whole goal of the North End Urban Plan, is having the community drive the vision of the North End. And I don't know, I mean, I'm sure you did, but the July 30th or 31st presentation by NBBJ showed a lot of the potential future for the North End. And a lot of it was that mixed use type of building and development, because like I was saying, you can't just have one or the other. We have to, we can't just have new housing without places for people to work, but we can't just add jobs without having people live here. So I think mixed use is just the way to go all around as we look at further development. And we have the Navy Hospital land there that we are, still trying to acquire, but offers that gateway to the water, which, talking about the defense industry and tech, think of how that can be utilized as like a prototype site for some of the mini UUVs that are being developed and that type of work. It's like it's a prime spot for that to happen. And, that's all of these potential items and potential growth there, I think, are really going to be able to happen because of the North End Urban Plan, because of us kind of taking the time to make sure that our zoning is developed holistically and getting that in place so that we can develop it as the city needs, but also as the residents need.
And I don't know if you saw, but the Navy is currently conducting boundary survey of Naval Station Newport and its surrounding properties. So maybe perhaps this is, I don't know. I looked at it as a small sign of, well, maybe they're finally looking at what property they own and maybe they're getting ready to shake things up.
Yeah. As an employee of the Navy, don't hold your breath. But as a city leader and a resident of Newport, I do kind of want to hold my breath, because I think I want us to really be able to dive into that property so bad. I think there's so much potential there.
I'm wondering, back to my tourism question for a minute. I don't see the economy of Newport that it has to be necessarily a pie, and I think that the tourism industry can stay as strong as it is, but also have something else grow with it. Do you agree? Yeah,
totally. I think that we have to keep supporting our tourism industry, because I think we should be proud of it. It's a great industry. And frankly, I like being able to eat good food. So I like that we have that out in Newport, which is why I have tried to be a good partner and a strong partner for them. And I look at two big instances of that in my term this year of, look, when we had the food trucks come in, I really made sure that we took our time to find the right places for those food trucks and that understand where they would be and why they would be good assets in those locations. And then when those two new hotels came in and they just wanted us to give them a liquor license, we said no. We said, look, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars total have our local, like, resident-owned restaurants spent on liquor licenses? It's an investment for them. We have to help them protect that investment. And I think we have to just continue with that kind of thought process of being partners.
Speaking of protecting investments, many people will say the waterfront, many historic properties. A lot of people, I think I must read about it every day in some online forum, are concerned about hotels, concerned about the Carpianato property, the former Newport Grand, as well as the Pell Bridge ramp realignment. Any thoughts on those three, on or what you hear from people or what you usually tell people? And most people should know, or probably don't know, is a lot of times That's planning and zoning board. But from city council, any thoughts on that?
So yes, that is planning and zoning, but I think that we can't just explain it away as that, because that's planning and zoning enforcing the ordinances that we, the council, puts in place. And so we have to make sure that we have ordinances that reflect what the city wants and what our residents want. And that means continuing to review and evolve and update them. And that has somewhat started with the zoning that will be passed as part of the North End Urban Plan, but that will just apply to the North End. So we have to keep working on the updates from the comprehensive land use plan, because that put forth a really holistic vision for Newport, but that vision doesn't mean anything if we don't have the zoning to back it up. Not that it doesn't mean anything, but we can't actually build that vision unless we have the zoning to back it up. So that's a huge component of being able to ensure that the future of Newport looks how we want it to look. Because a lot of the things that have gone up that, yes, were approved by zoning that people don't like, were allowed. They had to approve them because the zoning that was in place allows it to happen. So if we don't want it to happen, we need to change the zoning.
Can you talk about how, it was, one of those hot topics in Newport until the next hot topic, but, how the moratorium went for the North End area and maybe the properties around Carpianato. I hate to single out one business owner or one business, but that's how it happens. And,
Yeah.
how did that moratorium go? Do you think?
I think it was okay. I think that we had to, they were proposing big substantial changes to our zoning that the city wasn't ready for. We had to look at them holistically. And again, that ties back into the goals in the comp plan. We needed to make sure that all of that zoning that was developed and eventually put in place actually develops what the city wants. And so, yeah, there was a lot of overlap, but there wasn't 100% overlap, and it doesn't, we can't be letting the precedent be that outside private developers drive what happens in Newport. We have to make sure that we are giving the reins to the residents and to the council. We are the ones who are in charge. We are the ones who should be making the decisions for Newport. So that, I think it was overall, from the perspective of being able to develop the correct zoning, I think it went well. I think the North End Urban Plan is a strong plan, and I think that the zoning that's coming out of that will be good as well. And look, we did leave a seat at the table for Carpianato. How they didn't participate is, I think that's that's another conversation as well. But part of being a partner to our business community does involve, making sure that our larger Newport community is involved in part of the discussions and decisions, because we can't stovepipe the different sections of our city.
And despite what people might read or say, I've seen it many times, and it irks me. And I just wonder at what level it irks you that Newport sells its soul and sells its property to the highest bidder.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I've learned at this point to not, as long as I think that we're doing the good things and pushing for the right things, I can't really let things I see online bother me, because there's just too much.
There was one hotel owner who made the mistake of reading social media comments, and would call me all hours of the day, and just worried about what everybody thought. And sometimes it's worth taking the overall message and reaching out to people and having a conversation, but sometimes social media isn't the place to have that conversation.
Exactly. I've most of the time when I have someone comment on a post I've given or on my page, I try to reach out to them individually, because it just becomes this cycle of comments, and you don't know someone's tone. You have to wait an hour for them to respond, and maybe they haven't eaten lunch yet and they're cranky. Like, it's hard to have a real in-depth conversation via social media. I think social media is great for putting out content and putting out information, but it's difficult to have a real conversation there.
If COVID wasn't enough to deal with, we always and have for many years have had climate change to worry about, and obviously we saw that. I think it's 6 or 7 weeks ago now. I don't know how time is flying by, how it's already August 20th. But
I don't have a sense of time anymore, Ryan.
The big flood that recently happened, the big storm, the 30-minute storm, just showed us what opportunities we have in the city. Your thoughts on climate change in the city, what more can be done, what is being done? How do you see the climate change impact on Newport?
I think the three biggest impacts that we face from climate change are sea level rise, stormwater runoff, and air quality. So however many weeks ago, like you said, that storm, we didn't have the CSO issues that we have had with past storms, but there still was there was nowhere for that water to go. And part of that is because of the tide gates, and we've been doing work, but clearly there's more work to be done. So I think we have to focus on those three issues from a climate change perspective, but then that's just dealing with the impacts. And so to also try to look at it again holistically, how can we as a city be investing in sustainable and renewable energy sources? We tried to do that, I don't know, a year, 2 years, 3 years ago with Middletown, where we tried to enter into an agreement with a private organization to have a joint agreement to buy solar energy that would be used for the city's energy usage, and that didn't end up working out. But I want us to keep looking at those types of options, because climate change isn't going away, but we can't just look at how we deal with the impacts. We have to try and see how we can contribute to at least somewhat of the solution. So that's why we have the planning board and staff and Energy and Environment Commission right now looking at community choice aggregation. Say that 5 times fast. Which is when the residents are automatically able to have a certain percentage of their energy usage provided by renewable energy sources. And there's a lot that goes into it, which is why we have the folks looking into it right now. But I think we have to keep looking into those options and seeing how we can contribute to the solution. And then we have to be more long-term thinking. And so what can our utility infrastructure handle? How can we keep upgrading it and keep improving it? And then how can we build in resiliency and the idea of trying to mitigate climate change impacts into the regulations and requirements for development. We have the design review board. How can we strengthen it and add more design guidelines and best practices in there that include green infrastructure, open space, stormwater mitigation, actual green building materials. There's a lot of options there that I think we need to build into the design review board's work, which we have started bulking up the design review board and making it more actually effective. But I think that there's a lot more we can grow there.
Was there a lot that you had hoped to introduce this year, but COVID-19, it has been difficult to get things done on the council because of COVID-19?
Yes and no. Definitely at first, the first couple months of it, we couldn't meet. And when we could meet, we were only allowed to talk about things that were directly related to the emergency response. That was the first month or two, I think. I'm sorry that I can't tell time anymore. It's so bad.
Yeah. We all started this in March. So
Yeah.
it was a long time ago. Obviously, since March, as if a pandemic wasn't enough, there have been lots of other important issues that have come up, and Newport's kind of been, I don't want to, it's been a place where a lot of protest or a lot of public engagement around the issue of racism has happened over the last several months. I think there were 3, 4, 5 different walks and different events, at least. So I believe I know where you land on this, but for many people, they might not watch city council meetings. They may not attend these events. So let's talk about it. And, systemic racism, is it a problem in the city? Is it a problem in the state? Does it need to be addressed? And if so, how?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's a problem. Systemic racism is something that affects our institutions across the board at every level. I try to be really clear in how I talk about it with people, that I'm not talking about you, an individual, being a racist. I'm talking about the inequities and the racism that's built into our systems and institutions that make it harder and put in blocks and for people of color and Black and brown people to accomplish, to be more successful, to get investments from banks, to buy houses, it's woven into our institutions. And so to really be able to address it, we have to recognize that fact. We have to be able to be open and understand the fact that racism is real, institutional, systemic racism is real, and it's a part of our systems, because we can't change things unless we recognize that. And so a big part of it is being willing to have those open, uncomfortable conversations. They're often uncomfortable for white people, but we won't be able to really honestly determine and examine the shortfalls and inequities until we do that. But it's also, the city leaders need to go to our residents and really include our residents and community leaders and organizers and activists in the conversations that we want to have about the future of Newport, and try to understand what their needs are and how we can best meet those needs, have it be driven by our population, by our residents, not necessarily by the city. We work for the residents of Newport. So we have to go to where they are and work with them to see how we can start addressing racism and making strong changes. I mean, I introduced a resolution with councilors McCalla and Taylor that condemned racism, just as a recognizing that it's out there and we don't agree with it. And we wanted to make sure that we took a public stand as a body saying that, but also just as a very first step, beginning the training of implicit bias. I work for the government. I know training does not solve things on its own. Training can't be the only thing that we do, but it's a step. And then we also recently took a step of really endorsing and pushing forward to have African-American history, Black history more incorporated into our curriculum. And because that's so often the only Black history that kids learn is slavery. And then we zoom forward to the civil rights movement. What? Like, what else happened? And especially here in Newport, we have a really strong Black history, and we need to be teaching our kids about that and continue to celebrate that. And that, I've worked and continue to work with groups like Sankofa and the Newport Port Marker Project to educate people and keep doing that work to put out that information and make sure people know it. And it's also, we have to be committed to building institutions that look like our community. Hiring teachers of color, endorsing candidates of color, just really recognizing where we can do better.
And Frank Prosence and I recently had a conversation with Keith Stokes all about the importance of bringing that education in schools. If anybody wants to go to our website and just search for Keith Stokes, you'll find that video. But it's very fascinating, and it's been a work that it didn't just pop up this year. It's been a work for many years. Another uncomfortable conversation for many is schools for some reason. And
I'm very comfortable. I love this conversation.
Well, the school bond question, and for those who are just tuning in and catching up to what is going on in November, you're going to be voting whether to approve an addition at Pell Elementary School as well as a new Rogers High School. Do you support it? And if not, and if the bond fails, if the bond fails, what should the city do to address school building needs in the future?
I 100% support it. I think that the bond is great and that it should absolutely pass. And I absolutely endorse the passage of it and tell it to everyone that I talk to, because we have to just lay out the facts real quick. Rogers was ranked the worst building in the state, the worst school building in the entire state of Rhode Island. Elementary, middle, high school, including all of those. Rogers is the worst building. We have kids in a school that is falling down around them. We can't continue to let that happen. And the funding that is available to us through reimbursement by the state was on the ballot in 2018 and Newport, it was supported in Newport by 84% of voters. It won by 84% in Newport. And, I remember hearing from someone on the school committee say, maybe Newporters were just being real generous and really wanted to give that money to other communities. But I really think that they wanted it to come here too. And we have 52.5% reimbursement by the state that will expire if we do not pass the bond this year. And what that means is when we look at what the actual cost of the school would be, it's a very low increase. It's less than $10 a month for over 2/3 of our homeowners would be increased by the school funds. And I just think, when you line up those three facts, 52.5% reimbursement, Rogers is falling down around our children, and we have, I should say, so 52.5% reimbursement that will expire. Rogers needs to be replaced. I don't think anyone can make that argument that it doesn't. And that the municipal bond rates are so low. They're nearing 0%. And less than $10 a month increase for 2/3 of homeowners. I think that it's just such the obvious right choice. And then I think that we have to look at it. Yes, there's that financial perspective, but let's look at it from the moral perspective as well. It's our job to educate and take care of our kids. That's our job. We have the moral obligation to provide an education for our children. I cannot express how strongly I feel about that. And that means, yes, we pass this school bond and we build a school that our kids deserve and feel safe and cared and loved in. And then we keep going and keep investing and keep giving our kids the education they need and deserve. It can't stop with the school building. It has to. This is just the beginning, I think, of really just, let me get corny for a sec, like just wrapping our arms around the students of Newport and telling them that we care and telling them that we want to give them what they need and deserve.
I got to ask, what happened to in the regionalization talks with Middletown in Portsmouth, and did we explore that enough, do you think?
I think we did. I think that we explored it quite a lot, not just this time too. I mean, it's been talked about so many times. When I was in high school, it was talked about. It's been talked about since then multiple times. And look, we tried to make it happen. I advocated in front of the Middletown Town Council for regionalization at both of their meetings. They said no. They didn't say no to regionalization. They said no to having a conversation about regionalization, which I think is really what we need to take home. It's not like they said no to regionalization. They said no to the conversation. That's how uninterested in regionalization they are. They didn't even want to talk about it. And I just think we did our due diligence, and I think we did the work to try and make it happen, but we can't wait around for another community to have a change in their leadership or to change their mind or come around. We have to act and do what's right for our kids.
You brought it up, and I'm just wondering, I've said many times, I've said it at forums, I've said it here, is, students that are currently going to Rogers or making their way up through and heading to Rogers, it's got to be, if they're watching these videos, I hope so. I hope they're getting educated a little bit on candidates, but it's got to be a little depressing to hear how bad people think of your school and that it's the last in the state. And, we got to celebrate the successes. But you had mentioned that, you were in high school when regionalization was being talked about. And, do you remember having a feeling or what that made you feel like, or how that in the student body?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the kids care. I don't think that they are, I don't think they're against it. I don't think that they see a huge difference. I was friends with kids from all the communities when I was in high school. Most of the kids I know, they have overlapping friends from all the communities. I mean, it's harder right now because I don't think they get to see any of their friends. But I think the kids just want to feel like we care. And I think that that's the take home I always come back to, is it's hard for our kids in Newport to feel like we care about them if we're not willing to invest in them and to make their needs our first priority.
I've moved questions around a little bit because I've learned that they kind of go together, or the way people talk and how they flow a little bit better. So I put this question after the previous one because, we can agree that Newport is attractive, but how do we make it more attractive and affordable place to live for everybody? And I've also been adding for families, because obviously families and the education question almost go hand in hand. But, what can we do to make it a more affordable place for everybody and attractive for families and attractive for people of all walks of life?
Yeah. First of all, I love how you worded that because, Newport's gorgeous, but being beautiful isn't enough. And so we have to, again, I think I was talking about it during the economy and tourism question, is, looking at it from the three prongs of year-round housing with a year-round economy and with a good school system. Those three things have to, they have to coexist and be strong together. And I think that we do have a really robust set of city services as well that I don't think should go overlooked. But when I look at it from affordability and accessibility, that's part of why I put in a resolution for a homestead exemption. So a homestead exemption would create a benefit to our full-time residents, and we can draft it and craft it so that it would be beneficial to both our homeowners and our renters, because the way that the zoning, and sorry, stop me if I get too in the weeds, Ryan. But if you're over 4 units, you're commercially zoned anyway. So if you have more than 4 apartments, you're commercially zoned. So for our homes that have fewer apartments in them, they are in the residential tax bracket. So we can include them in our homestead if they're in the homestead exemption if they're renting to full-time residents. And the resolution that I put forward actually asked the staff to come up with a bunch of different options, because there's a bunch of different ways that it can be applied. And I wanted to make sure that we had enough time to really get into it. And so they're coming back to us, to the new council, hopefully, which I am part of the us, in December, and that will give us the time to have public conversations, maybe in person, about what it would look like and what the effects and long-term thoughts on it would be. And then it would be able to be implemented in the FY 21-22 budget year. We're in the FY 2021 fiscal year. And so it would be able to be implemented in the next fiscal year. So those benefits would be seen in next year's taxes. And the other housing thing that I think we have to really, you can't not talk about is short-term rentals. I don't want to demonize them. I don't think they're bad. But I think that we have to think about where they are and try to control the spread. I always want to say proliferation, but I always struggle. I always stumble over that word. But I mean, we can't be. They do have the option or the possibility of taking away housing from families if they're especially in our residential areas. So I worked with the Short-Term Rental Investigatory Group, STRIG, just a great name with a great acronym, back in my first term to come up with a bunch of recommendations and strong ideas for how to continue to improve how we regulate them. And then this term, we actually passed that strong initial set of ordinances based on those recommendations to start controlling that spread and start making it, start making people able to feel like the work is being done. And then also there were additional recommendations that came in from the planning board, and we said, yeah, we would love for you to keep investigating those. And we gave them the go ahead to keep doing that work and make it even more comprehensive.
My man, Mr. Prosence, would be upset if I didn't ask this question because he's all about the topic and he's gotten the question, I think, to just about everybody. But affordable housing is his thing, and he has written a lot about it. And currently, I think Newport is at 15%. The state's minimum is at 10%. Newport is among the few communities that actually surpass the number of affordable housing units available in their city. Which, if you think about affordable housing, it's less than 30% of your annual salary is considered.
Yeah. So when you say affordable, you really have to make sure you're clear about it, because in this conversation, really most of the time what it means is subsidized, whether it's the building was subsidized or the rent is subsidized.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. What do we do? Do we have to do anything to provide more affordable housing to those who need it?
I think that we have to make sure that our subsidized and affordable housing that we do have in place is able to stay. I know Senator Oyer worked with the new owners of Festival Field to make sure that stayed affordable, and so now it's getting redone, and which was direly needed. So what can happen is that subsidized ranking or status can expire, and we have to, as city leaders, need to stay aware of that and work with our state leaders and state delegates to make sure that the affordable and subsidized housing that we do have in place is able to stay in place. Because I am not looking to lose any of our housing. I think we got to keep it. I think it is what our residents need. And then I think that we also have to look at I think I mentioned it for workforce housing, especially when we're looking at developing mixed use. There's a gap in a lot of the housing in Newport, where if you edge out of the affordable bracket, where do you go? If you're not eligible for subsidized housing, there's no bridge to the housing that we have right now in Newport. It's mostly too expensive. So that also inhibits the growth of our community. So we have to look at how can we build workforce housing that is priced for our blue collar residents and our working residents who we want to be able to live here and stay here.
A big one here, and I don't know if you make lists. I'm a list guy. And so if reelected, talk to us about some, if you had to have only 3 priorities. I know there are many more priorities, and many more priorities can change day by day, but what would they be?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you made a good point about that. One of the things that we have to be able to do is, be adaptive. I think about how we've had to adapt to COVID and how it feels like a million years ago now, but with the gas outage back in January of 2019, how I had to adapt really quickly with that. But if I think about the priorities that I do have, I mean, the culture of transparency and openness has been a priority for me throughout my time on the council. It's one of the bases of what I ran on the first time, and I continue to really push on it because I want us to make sure that the discussion and debate that we have amongst ourselves as council happens on the dais, because I think it's so important for the residents of Newport to understand what we're talking about and why we're talking about it and why we're voting how we're voting. And I think that that's sometimes taken by people as arguing and us being divisive and the council not being strong. But I think it's government in action. I think we're showing how we come to the conclusions and decisions that we come to. And I don't think it's division. I think it's discussion and debate happening on the floor where it belongs. That's how government works. It's just now people are seeing more of it. And I mean, when I was appointed mayor in chair back in December of 2019, right? Yes. Sorry. 18? 18.
I just had to do it too. The gas outage was January 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing big next year.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I've joked that I'm cursed. But, in December when I was appointed, I wrote an open letter to the council really talking about what my priorities were for us to work together and how I really value the differences of opinion and debate that we have, and asked for the council's trust for that to happen. And I'm really proud of that and how that's happened and how that's played out on the council. And I do think that we've seen people engaged in a way that is a little bit different because they do feel like they understand things more. And I want that to continue. I think that is a really important part of government is, not everything is rote. Yeah, we might end up with a 7-0 vote at the end, but I think it's good for the debate to happen. And maybe some of us, through discussing it with each other, might end up having a different opinion at the end than we did in the beginning. I think that's great. It means we learn from each other. So yeah, that is always my number one priority. And it's always my overarching priority is really continuing to enrich that culture of transparency on the council. And then I think a second priority that I haven't talked about as much as I want to, and I want to start talking more about, is revamping our budget process. It is something that I think needs a lot of work. We really need to bring the public into that process a lot more and kind of stretch out how we talk about it and start talking about it even earlier so that there's actually time for a real deep dive into the budget, because we can't actually affect the long-term goals and priorities of the city if we don't have the funding in place for it. So that is really where our priorities get spread out and acted on, is whether or not they're in the budget. So I want to really revamp how we do that and make it a lot more able for public engagement.
One more.
3. And then again, this is something that I always have as a priority, and I think needs to continue as a priority all the time because there's always work to be done, but it's bikeability and walkability in the city. I have really worked on trying to get green and complete streets in action in Newport. I tried to get it put into as an ordinance in my first term. That didn't work out then, but I kept going and I worked with Councilor Taylor, and Councilor Taylor worked really hard on it, on getting it worked on this year, and we have some drafts that are in front of our city staff, and they're looking at getting that in place so that we have the guidelines and practices of green and complete streets really baked into all of our projects, so that anytime we have a project here in Newport, it has to consider how it can improve the bikeability and walkability of our city. And then, I mean, you look at our ADA compliance as a city, there's a lot of work to be done there too.
I think you asked through this because I've heard you at events encourage people to run many times. We currently have 19 candidates for city council, 12 for at-large, 2 for Ward 1, 2 for Ward 2, 3 for Ward 3.
I love it.
Do you think it's because of COVID-19, people sitting at home and we're like, you know what, this is going to be the year? Why do you think so many people are running for city council?
I mean, maybe I hadn't thought about that angle, but I think it's also just you look at, there's a lot of engagement nationally in politics, and there's been a lot of discussion even nationally to pay attention to the down ballot politics that so often get ignored. And so I think people are just waking up more and more to the importance of down ballot politics. And the things that we do as a city council will affect your life more day to day than what some of the higher federal offices do. I'm not saying don't pay attention to them or that they're not important, but I'm just saying you can't ignore local and state politics. So I think that there's a whole host of reasons probably why people are involved and are running, but really regardless, I love to see it, because when I ran the first time, I think there was only one of the ward seats was challenged, and there was only like there was only like 5 people, maybe 6, that ran at large. So it's such a huge change now, and I think it's great.
If you were on this side of the table, how do I have this question worded? Here it is. If you were on this side of the table, what question would you like to see, would you ask of each candidate? And I've been adding a second one onto that, is what question do you think voters should be asking of candidates?
Good one. I would probably ask, it kind of keys into the question you had before of like, look, there's a lot of people on the ballot and they're not all going to get in office. What would you do to, keep participating and keep being engaged in the city if you don't get elected? Because there's so much need, especially you look at boards and commissions and other organizations in the city. There's just a lot of need for engaged people to take their time and give it to the city. So I think that's what I would ask if I was wearing my What's Up Newp hat.
All right, I'll have to get you one.
And then, I mean, that's such a hard question of what do I think that voters should ask candidates, because the wonky part of me is like, ask me to explain the in-depth policies that you have for every issue in our city. But I don't think that's a realistic question.
Yeah. Well,
but I think you just have to ask them the priorities question. I think if you're voting for somebody, you should know what their main goals and priorities are.
And I'll take this moment, as I've been making almost every single meeting, to remind people to go to City of Newport's website. You can see all of the board commissions. The chances are they need some volunteers on majority of them. If you want to get involved, want to take the first step into getting involved with the city.
And we need you, and we will love you for it.
It came up a couple times, and wondering where you land on a possible charter review. Would you support a charter review? What would you want to see that address? Some of the things that have come up is term limits for city council candidates, a strong mayor. I'm not saying that you're not strong, but a strong mayor, meaning that it's elected by.
I know what you mean.
I'm talking to 2 different people right now.
It's true.
Some have brought up 7 different wards, each representing different part of the city. Charter review, what would you like to see it address if you'd like to see one?
Yeah, I mean, I'd support a charter review. I think that thinking about how often they're supposed to happen, I think we're probably due. Um, what I would want to like maybe add, not necessarily as a caveat there, but if we do have a charter review commission, what we have to do is really make sure that they're given the time, resources, and access that they need to make solid recommendations. And then the council that they give those recommendations to needs to really be open and willing to really engage in those recommendations and take them seriously. And I mean, as for what I would want them to take on, I think that we've been on autopilot for a long time, too long. And I've tried to make changes during my time as chair. I think that in a lot of places we lack process entirely, and a lot of the processes that we do have are not always really up to par. So, I mean, I think about it, like I was mentioning before, the budget. I don't know how in depth the charter would need to get into it, but it's super high level for how the budget is addressed right now in the charter. And the same with the boards and commissions. It's very high level in the charter. And some of these would be charter issues and some of them aren't, but I think that they all would benefit from a really in-depth discussion on serious changes because we just need to overall beef up the city's way of doing business and establish processes and guidelines and best practices across our government. And as for the mayor question, I think that we need to have either a strong mayor or a council chair / president. I don't think that we should keep the title of mayor if we don't have a strong separately elected mayor, because it's just confusing. It's confusing for a lot of people. And it's confusing in multiple ways because I have people who get upset that I'm not doing things that I legally can't do. And then, you have the flip side of it where people will always think that you are trying to maybe take advantage of the position and do things that you shouldn't be doing. And it's just, I think it's too confusing for everyone and it should be one or the other. And that's always been my opinion because from the very beginning, I've seen people be confused by it. But I do think as for which direction we should go in, I think that that's something that the research would need to be done by the commission because there's pros and cons on both sides. And as for which one is right for Newport, I'm not sure, but it's got to be one or the other.
And I think I might be wrong here, but East Providence, when they made the change, the voters actually voted on the change on how the government would be, whether it would be strong or, so that decision would ultimately come down to the voters, I think.
Yeah, it would be. The changes from the charter review have to go on the ballot.
Yeah. This is a tough one. Just a softball here at the end, because we've talked about some heavy topics and sometimes some awkward or difficult topics. But it's always good to remind people about why you love Newport and why you call it home, if you love it.
Oh, I hate it. It's the worst. That's the clip that's going to get taken from this.
Yeah.
No, I love Newport. I mean, in my career, I've had the opportunity to spend some time in other places. And I never wanted to settle in them. I wanted to change back in, I think it was 2014 when I moved down to DC. I needed to change and I really had an opportunity to stay there and make it my permanent home. And as much as I really like that city, it wasn't Newport. There's no ocean like that. I think that there's not enough can be said for living by the ocean. And that's probably the number one thing I love about Newport is being able to bike my bike to the beach and just run right into the water. But I also I love the community here. You know, for better or for worse, Newporters are very engaged, more than like any other city that I've ever seen. And I hear it all the time when we bring in consultants. They're always like, "Wow, so yeah, we didn't know if we would be able to get people to comment, but we really did." And it's like, yep, Newporters are engaged. They care. And I love that. I think that that's awesome.
We covered a lot today. Are there any topics that we may have missed or things you wanted to share with folks?
I mean, there's a lot that we talked about. I think the number one thing is one of the biggest benefits of local politics, especially if you're trying to figure out how you want to vote, is that you can call the person that's running and they will answer their phone because it's probably their cell phone. And I just really encourage people to reach out to all the candidates, reach out to me. You can text me, you can email me, you can call me. I'll answer. And to really take your time and investigate and learn, because we're all different people and we all want to do what's best for Newport. So I think that the best thing a voter can do is take their time and learn about who's on the ballot. And, you know, vote for me on September 8th, and then hopefully again, vote for me on November 3rd. And just call me if you need anything. I'm around.
And any website contact information you want to share?
Yeah, so my website's jamiebova.com. Pretty easy. My email, also pretty easy, is jamie@jamiebova.com. And you can call me, 401-236-4840. It's on the city website. It's on my website. It's all over the internet by now. So give me a call.
Excellent. And remind people that September 8th is the primary. November 3rd is the general election. Everybody in Newport has a reason to go to the voting booth or to vote ahead of time. I highly recommend vote.sos.ri.gov. Just search Secretary of State, view your sample ballot, early vote. All the information is there.
And I will say, not everyone always realizes this, but you don't have to be affiliated with a party to vote in our local primary. So the Newport City Council and the school committee, which they don't have a primary, but we are nonpartisan. So yeah, there might be partisan state level primaries and you're like, oh, well, I'm independent, I can't vote in those. You can still vote in the local primary.
Every single registered voter has a reason to go to or to vote in both primary and general election, because you're narrowing it down from 12 to 8 for city council on September 8th and then 8 to 4 on November 3rd. So
yeah,
lots of narrowing down. It's like The Voice. So it's a reality TV show where they narrow it down. It's a music show. Yeah.
Well, now I feel out of touch.
Yeah, see what COVID's done to me. Sit at home watching the couch. Awesome. Well, I think we hit on a lot today, and I encourage people to visit our voter guide online, learn more about the candidates. We also have linked to your Alliance for Livable Newport survey answers and other profiles, so you can find out more about Jamie if you didn't get it all here, and you can certainly get in touch. So thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for hosting this and putting 1,000 million hours in. The people of Newport appreciate you and your dogs.
It's nap time here. So maybe they'll get some more energy this afternoon when we continue these. So Jamie, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thanks, and have a good day. All right, that is Jamie Bova, and she is running for Newport City Council at Large. And again, September 8th, November 3rd is your two important dates. As a Newport voter, you have to go here and vote in the primary and vote in the general election. Vote.sos.ri.gov. You can see a sample ballot. You can see where you're voting. You can see what ward you live in. You can see if you're voting for just at large or if you're voting for Ward 3 as well. And again, whatsupnewp.com has all of that information for you. Coming up here in this video voter guide, we have 2 p.m. We'll be joined by Jean Marie Napolitano, will be joining us at that point. We'll have a conversation just like this, as we've done with many of the candidates now. And then coming up at 5 p.m. today, we will be joined by Elizabeth Forte, who is running for at-large. Both Jean Marie as well as Elizabeth as well as Jamie are running at-large. So we're at an at-large day today with 3 interviews coming at you, and then we have a couple more coming up tomorrow. You can get the full schedule on our website as well. I also encourage you to sign up for our newsletter, which goes out every morning and every evening and has all of this great information as well. All right. I will catch up with you all in a couple hours. Again, visit the website for all of the latest on all of the candidates and be an informed voter when you go on September 8th and November 3rd.